Syft is full of powerful visualizations, and within the Visualize section, there's a KPIs and Accounts tab. And in this section, you have the option to visualize any account in your profit and loss or balance sheet. You can also visualize any KPIs that you've created on Syft, along with the profitability of the business. You can select the accounts that you want to visualize in this drop down over here. If you want to automatically deselect any that have been selected before, you can just click on the X and it will deselect all but one. And then you can click on the drop down and select any of those that you would like to include. You can go select totals, so for example, gross profit, or you can select income or expense account. So I could select chocolate sales, and perhaps if I go down to cost of sales, I could select a cost of sales account. I could also go and select expenses over here. So perhaps let's go and select advertising expense, and we could go select any other account as well. I then can see how these accounts are moving over time in this line graph, and this graph will automatically give me some graphical insights about what's happening in each of these accounts or totals over the time period. It'll tell me the average of that metric and the best and worst performing months. And so this really gives you a good understanding of what's happening in these accounts. We can identify seasonality and trend and get a really good understanding based on this graph and the insights. You can toggle these insights off if you would like, so we can just click there and you'll note that they disappear, or you can toggle them back on if you find them useful. We can look at the information in a different way using the stacked bar graph. Here we can go and select accounts again, much like we did in the previous graph, but we can go look at this in a bar graph format instead of the line graph format. There's many other different visual tools that you have available to you. We could look at it in terms of a horizontal bar graph, but note that while the line and stacked bar graph look at it over time, this horizontal bar graph will give you each account and its value at a specific point in time. So here we have January and December. We could go and look at it in terms of a normalized horizontal stacked bar graph, and this gives you a good idea as to what percentage each of these items make up of the total. We then can look at it in terms of a tree map graph as well, and we could also look at it in terms of this icicle graph. If you click on this one, it will zoom in so you can have a better view of what each of these sections include. And then we have a donut graph, and this donut graph will again show you several metrics which you can select over here, and this donut graph will show you the proportion that each of these metrics that you can select over here make up of the total donut. It has graphical insights telling you the total of all the items you selected, and if you hover over each of these sections, it will include its value in the center of the donut, and on the right hand side it will highlight that value and the rest will be grayed out. So those are the different options you have, and for each you can select which metrics you're interested in. All of this functionality is also available for balance sheet accounts. So again, here we can go and select any totals that are available within the balance sheet, along with any asset or liability or equity accounts, and we can include those in our donut graph. We're also able to filter these visualizations for divisions. So if you click over here, you can go and select one of the tracking categories or classes that pull through from your underlying accounting software. And once you've selected those, you can click apply, and it will go and update this graph for you to include the metrics that you've requested. So let's go look at it just for our bank account, our total non-current assets, and perhaps our accounts receivable. And now we'll be able to see these metrics for those two divisions that we've selected, Arundel and Atlantica. So this divisional visualization can be really useful as well to get a detailed view of each of these accounts for specific divisions. If you've created a visualization here that you would like to include in a report, you can go to the reports template and build it out, but an easier way of doing that is just coming to the top right hand side here and clicking on add to template. And then you can either select an existing template or click on create a new template and then add it to that template. And so that's a really quick way of adding a view that you've currently built out here directly to a report. Those are some of the functionalities available within the profit and loss and balance sheet visualize accounts section.
The next area is the cash flow direct graph. And what this does is it turns your cash flow statement using the direct method into a graph or waterfall type of graph. You can choose a waterfall graph over here. And here you can see we've got our cash received, our cash paid, cash from operating activities, investing, and financing activities. This is a really nice graphical way to see the cash in and cash out per each of those different areas. If we want to look at it in a line or bar graph, you can just choose those options over here. So here we can see if we choose line graph, you can choose which area you want to look at. You click here, and then you can click trading activities. We can look at investing activities and financing activities, and then it will show you how that changes along the period that you have selected. Then we can look at our bar graph. We would have to unselect these because a bar graph shows only one selection. So if we choose bar graph, then we can look at how this changes for your bar graph. You need to select a little bit more detail in the bar and line graph than with the waterfall graph, but the waterfall graph does give you an overall view. And for each of these graphs, you will be able to see graph insights at the bottom here. So that is your direct cash flow statement graph. The cash section under Visualize is a great tool to help you understand and manage your cash flow better. It's got two sections, cash flow and cash balance. Under cash flow, we can choose to look at the flow or the direct or indirect cash. If we look at flow, we can choose the period that we'd like to look at. The default is 12, but if you click on the drop down arrow next to 12, you can amend this. And then we can choose if we want to see cash in versus cash out, just the cash in, just the cash out, or the net cash flow. We can then select which account we'd like to consider, or we can look at all the accounts together. Once you're happy with your selections, don't forget to click Save to save that view going forward. Then you can see the graph based on our inputs, and we can see the cash in versus cash out. We can see the period in which the most cash was received and its value, and we can see the period in which the least cash was received and its value. So we can see that in January and in April, May, June, and July, there is a problem because our cash out was more than our cash in, but the rest of the months look relatively okay. At the bottom here, we have graph insights, and they tell us the cash received for the period, the average cash received, the month that the most cash was received, and the month the least cash was received. We have similar insights for cash paid and net cash. Now, of course, these insights will change based on what you've chosen at the top here. Another really cool feature is the drill down feature. So if I were to click on the month of March, it would take me to a list of transactions that show that cash. I'd be able to see the specific transactions that resulted in that cash inflow or the cash outflow. So that is a really cool tool.
To get a graphical representation of your top customers by balance outstanding, you can go to Visualize, Customers, Receivables, and then Customer Debtors. Here, you have the option of choosing your top debtors. So you can choose your top 15, 20, 10, 5, 3, or all of them. Here, you can see how much each debtor owes you, which debtor it is, and at the bottom, you can get some graphical insights for a deeper understanding of this graph. So if you are looking at this, we can use this graph to make some business decisions. So we can identify who owes us the most, and if we wanted to focus our collection efforts, we would need to focus on, say, the top 3 debtors. But in this case, we can see that Judy Hops is the individual who we need to focus on. So Judy Hops, as you can see, we are a little bit too dependent on. So if she were to go under and not be able to repay this debt, we may end up with some problems. So it might be an idea to change the strategy and diversify a bit better, which is a key business decision that we can make off of this graph. Then if you go to debtors days outstanding, we can get a pie chart which gives us an overview of the health of our debtors, because here we can see the days they are outstanding, and the older the debt, the more risky it is, as it is unlikely that you will receive this money. So as we can see, a large proportion of this company's debt is older than 3 months, which indicates that this debt is not very healthy. Once again, at the bottom, we get some graphical insights. So, debtors days outstanding gives us an overview of the health of our debtors. And again, I would be focusing on the debtors with older debt and try to collect this debt. Alternatively, consider if this debt is actually recoverable and should be written off. So, there are some key business and financial decisions that can be made over here. The Customers section under Visualize within the Tools section helps you look at visualizations of your customers by sales, activity, and accounts receivables. Within each of these categories, there are some great ways of analyzing your customers to help you make better business decisions. Starting with sales metrics. This is where you will be able to visualize all of your key customer metrics. You can choose your periods, your particular customer or customers, as well as filter for the particular customer metric, such as growth in sales or average customer spend. You are also able to populate either a line graph or a bar graph. Then looking at customer sales. This is where you can see your top customers by sales. We can change this to look at the top 20, 10, 5, or 3 customers, or even all of our customers together. This helps us see which customers are generating us the most sales, what percentage of total sales they are generating, as well as how this is changing. So currently we are looking at the versus prior period, and that means that it is comparing it to the prior month. So as you can see, June of 2023 is being compared to May 2023. However, you are able to change this to versus prior year, where 2023 will be compared to 2022. As you can see, Judy Hops is giving us the most sales per month. However, the proportion of total sales that she has generated for us has decreased from 59.8% to 43.9%. Despite the decrease, we can see that we are doing really well with Judy Hops. So looking at this graph, we need to make sure that we are looking after Judy Hops as our customer so that we can generate more sales in the future. And we should investigate why Snow White is our lowest customer and why we aren't selling anything to her. Perhaps we should look at what we are doing with Judy Hops and try do the same with Snow White in order to generate more revenue. Additionally, we can see that we are also very dependent on Judy Hops, which may be an indication that we need to get more varied clients so that we aren't dependent on one customer. So you can see just from looking at this graph, the percentages and the movements, you can get an idea of how your sales are made up and make some business decisions about where to focus your customer service and your sales team. At the bottom, you can get a summary of the graph insights. You can already see that the top customers by sales for the month was Judy Hops, and that this value was down versus prior month. You can also see that the top 3 clients accounted for 67.6% of total sales. And these insights also tell you which customer exhibited the largest change in proportion of sales from month to month. So overall, you can see that you can get a good look at your customers by sales. You can also change the period you are looking at this graph and use it to make some decisions about how to go forward with your sales. Looking at activity. So activity is divided up into 3 sections: active customers, customer retention, and new customers. The active customers graph is useful to see the number of active customers you have, since active customers generate sales. If your active customers increased or decreased, you can investigate what changed in your business to ensure that you make business decisions that increase active customers and so result in increased revenue. So for example, we can see that we had an increase in active customers from August of 2022 to September 2022. And so we would investigate what happened between these 2 periods to try and understand what increased active customers. At the bottom over here, as always, we have graphical insights where we summarize the movements in this graph. The next graph is customer retention. And this graph helps you visualize your customer retention in a graphical format for any period you would like. You can obviously change the period here in the global date selector, as well as change the number of periods over here. Within the graph insights over here, it says that month on month customer retention illustrates the proportion of customers invoiced in a given month that were also invoiced in the previous month. So that is how Syft calculates retention. If you invoice a client this month and you also invoiced them last month, then it says you have retained that client. It also gives you some insights into the highest retention rate and the months that was recorded, such as December, March, and April over here. And it also tells us the months with the lowest retention rate. And this is useful because you can go and investigate what happened in those months that you lost clients and ensure that it doesn't happen again. So, for example, in November 2022, which had the lowest retention rate, perhaps you had an issue with a supplier, or maybe one of your sales staff was rude to a client, etc. So small things like that can make you lose clients, and so being able to go and identify the problematic months, you will be able to investigate it and rectify it going forward, which is a powerful tool in keeping the clients that you worked so hard to gain. Then new customers within Visualize Customers allows you to visualize the number of new customers added in the period in question. So this helps you to see when you got new customers, and it shows you the new customers invoiced per month. So as you can see, it shows 12 months of data, and it gives you the option of either a bar graph or a line graph. Below the graph, you will find graph insights, which help you to understand the graph more. Here we see the total number of new customers acquired, the largest change in customers for the current period, as well as how many customers were acquired per month on average. And these insights will allow you to go and investigate what you did in the months with many new customers to try and replicate that going forward to get new customers, as well as to investigate what happened in the months with low numbers of new customers in order to rectify any issues. So this is a useful graph that helps you monitor your growth in customers, and if your growth is going up or down, you can investigate that to make sure that you are making the best business decisions. The last tool under Visualize Customers is this Receivables tab. This is a really useful tool in managing your accounts receivables and your bad debts. Here we have a list of all of our customers and how much they each owe us in total. It also shows how that total is split, whether it is currently owed for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or older. So this is a really great tool that helps you to manage your debtors, making sure that you reserve time to stay on top of your debtors and focus your time on recovering your old debtors whilst staying on top of your current debtors. It also helps you identify if there are any debtors you need to write off. So for example, these ones that are older than 3 months, you need to consider if you are actually going to recover that debt, and as a result, perhaps you should consider writing it off. So it shows us the total due as well as the percentage of the total. Additionally, like most Syft features, you are able to click on a heading and it will reorder it. So here we are seeing it from largest to smallest, but if you click again, you will get the column to go from smallest to largest. We also have the option to look at the top 50 or top 100 debtors, as well as all of them. If you click this Options tab, you will have the option to toggle on decimals, insights, or hide email and mobile numbers. Email and mobile numbers are very useful if you want to call or mail the customers to try and get them to pay the money that they owe you. At the bottom, we have some insights on this table. So to highlight some of the key things such as the top debtor, the amount they owe, and the percentage of the total debtors they make up. So just some insights to help you understand the table a bit more. Additionally, it will tell you the percentage and the value of these older than 3 months. And at this stage, £266 is outstanding, which may be something to look at. If you click this FX exposures, you will see your exposure to different currencies and the movements in the different exchange rates. So movements and exchange rates will change the amounts they actually receive. So if these amounts are very big, then it may be a good idea to get a FEC or something similar to help manage the risk that comes with the exchange rate. Or if they are small, however, then it may just be interesting or something to consider or be aware of, but nothing that you may be needing to do. So there you have it. The accounts receivable section, which helps you better understand your accounts receivables and understand the risks associated with it.
You can visualize your company's profitability by navigating to Visualize and then clicking on KPIs and Accounts and then this Profitability tab. And within this section, you can visualize your income and expenses, your sales, your cost of sales, your other income, and all of your expenses. And we have separate videos where we're going to dig into how each of these separate tabs work. One reason that subscription e-commerce has recently become so successful is that subscription companies have customer retention built into their business model. After all, your business relies on subscribers to continue. But not all subscription businesses are aware of this, and often they focus on getting new sales and new customers as opposed to retaining the customers they already have. But since 80% of your future sales come from only 20% of your existing customers, which is known as the 80-20 rule, it's vital that you focus on your retention rate. And that's why Syft has a retention section, which takes a look at how well you're doing at retaining your customers, and it helps you identify things that are maybe going wrong in regards to churn or contractions. We also then take a deeper look at churn, and we do a bit of forecasting into the future churn. And so we're going to take a look at each of these 3 tabs and see how they can help your subscription business. Within the retention tab, we can look at our retention rate, which is the retention rate on a total revenue basis for various different periods. So we can choose how many periods we want to look at over here, and we can choose if we want to see the monthly recurring revenue or the annual recurring revenue. And you can just toggle between the 2 over here. We then get a graphical view with key metrics. If you hover over any of the graphs, you'll note that the right-hand side changes to that period. So currently it's showing me the details for the month that I've selected, Jan 2023. I can go and change this like I can with any other section of Syft. But if I go and hover over, say, for example, March, you'll note that on the right-hand side, it now shows me the expansion, contractions, churn, and retention rate for that month. So you can go and hover over any of these columns and see the updated figures. And in this way, you can take a detailed look at months when things went well and not so well. So for example, in this month, we can see that the churn has increased dramatically. We can see that our churn is $2,473 and our expansions are only $1,247. And so as we can see, our retention rate has dropped below 100. This differs to this month, for example, where our retention rate was 101% because we had no contractions or churn, but we had some expansions. And so all of these things contribute to this retention rate, and this retention rate is an indication of how well you're retaining your clients and protecting your current client base. So within this retention section, we can assess how successful we've been at keeping our customers happy. Each month, we can see how many of the past month's customers we were able to retain. Of course, we would like to retain 100% like we did in this month over here, but that's not always possible. Where we've dropped, we might want to investigate what happened in that month. Were there customer complaints, a product defect, or less support provided? So we could go and do some of that analysis on this month and try and understand what caused that churn. What caused those transactions, and why couldn't we get as much expansion? This graph is therefore a key starting point to determine what is going well or poorly in your company and how you can either replicate successes and avoid future issues. The next tab we have is churn. And if you click on churn, it will take you to a graph which will show you your subscription churn for a required period. You can change the period at the top in the universal date selector, so we could change it to quarterly instead and change the time period. And we can also go change the number of periods we look at over here. Again, we can look at churn in terms of either revenue or customers. So we're currently looking at it revenue for MRR or monthly recurring revenue. And over here, we'll be able to see what the churn was and the churn rate percentage for the previous month, so the month that we've selected over here. Again, if we hover over a certain month, you'll note that it will change. So now it's showing us the churn and churn rate for the month of July. And so we can go and investigate when our churn was higher or lower, and we could then go and consider what happened in this month where we had a churn rate of 4.5% as compared to this month when we had a 0.2% churn rate. And we can try and identify the causes of this and go and change it going forward. As I mentioned, we can look at it in terms of revenue or the number of customers. So revenue will consider more expensive products or plans. Whereas we look at customers, it will just tell us how many customers we've lost. So it's really useful to look at both of these, because over here we now have a churn rate of 3.7 as compared to, say, 0.3% in terms of customers. You can see here we had 0 churn rates in June, July, and August, and that's definitely what you're working towards. So you want to try and remove these spikes to make sure that you're retaining your customers that you've worked so hard to obtain. The last tab we have here is upcoming churn, and this shows us upcoming cancelled subscriptions by revenue and customers on a total basis. So sometimes someone may have already churned, but if they have an annual subscription, that might not yet be reflected because you already have revenue for the next month. Or if they're cancelled in the current month, but the churn will only reflect next month, that might not reflect in this churn graph. So upcoming churn takes into account those items that haven't really churned yet because you still have income from them in the current month, but because they've actually cancelled, we know that in the future, you're not going to generate that revenue. And so this is what this graph is showing us. It's showing us the future churn that is going to come about as a result of current cancellations. For example, there might be someone who's cancelled their annual subscription and they've paid all the way up till October, but in November that churn will suddenly reflect. And so currently it might not seem that our churn rate is so high because we've got their money for the next few months, but going forward, that churn will impact us. So it gives you a better picture of your future churn and how many customers and how much revenue you can expect to lose based on the current cancellations. And so this is a really useful graph to help you plan for the future. In closing on this retention section, remember that getting new customers is tough work, and so it's important to keep the ones that you've worked so hard to get. And that's what this retention section is there to help you do.